My name's Hank, and I'm a ham.
Hi, Hank.
Hey.
My auntie's picking me up.
First
Anyways,
casualty.
that's about all I have. Has anybody got any other questions? Okay. Okay. Thank you. So I just generated a little photo kind of slideshow, and that's for this is my work stuff, how I lay my work out, kind of what I do. I don't have a lot of ham install in here, but this is supposed to stimulate you all for questions, because I thought instead of laying something down and saying this is what I do and this is how I do it, I thought I'd interact and we could ask questions as we go along, because I have a method to my madness, and I can talk about newer vehicles, EV, and installation things of that nature, which are a little more gentle. There's owner's manuals that say do not install ham radios specifically, in Toyotas and things of this nature now. So yeah, there's a lot of question marks about things, but for a typical ham install, you know, I've got a couple things. There's power into the vehicle, and there's bringing the antenna into the vehicle, and then there's mounting the radio. And those are my components if I don't have a multi-radio installation or something like that. And bringing the power in, you know, it depends on if it's a VHF, UHF, which only draws 50 watts, which is about 9 or 10 amps, or if you're talking HF, which could be 20 amps plus. So, and then you've got grounding and things of that nature for RF, depending on the frequency and nature of the antennas, the counterpoise issues and things of that. And then mounting something. You know, you can always mount it down here in the console where you can go, yep, that's my repeater, that's my repeater. But it's not good to look 15 degrees down off of the road. You want to really keep your vision and everything in here. So sometimes you'll notice there's one install that has a display up above. And it's pretty simple. It's easy to function and look up, and it's easy to just touch without looking and things like that. But otherwise, where you're able to mount things is always a little different, because every car is a little ergonomically different, and you don't always have a remote control head. And a lot of times when you do, you're going to separate the RF jack or the TR pack, put it maybe under one of the seats, being thoughtful that there's maybe a heater vent there, or how you're going to mount it, or there's also airbag wires that go into the carpet. So there's other things of that nature. So I'm just going to start talking about bringing some power in right now, because I like to use typically 8-gauge wire. I like 8, and well, so if you want to know how many amps the 8-gauge wire is for, what he's asking is, how long can I run an 8-gauge wire and still achieve getting 25 amps out of it? So if you go to the ABYC, the American Boating Yachting Council handbook, you can go look up wire gauge, distance, and current available at that distance for that gauge. For example, 8-gauge, you can easily run 20 and 25 feet and still have 20 amps available. 10-gauge won't quite do it. And a lot of power cables are 10-gauge, and they might be 15 feet, but you can't always guarantee on an HF installation that that's enough current, or on those modulation peaks and things of that nature. It can definitely draw 20 plus amps. So I'm usually a little overkill, and I bring in the 8-gauge wire. And I know now from doing it what gauge wire to run all the time. And I rarely bring in 10-gauge unless I have a real simplistic small car. I'm not going to run it to the deck under the seat. Everything's going to be up around the dash area. I'll bring something in from the battery that's only 10 gauge. I always fuse 3 inches from the source. So I protect immediately after it comes off the battery post. You probably wouldn't take power from anywhere else except maybe a main distribution block where fuses are, and they've got some binding posts or posts in there where you can go in and attach your fuse assembly and bring power in.
Hey, doesn't some of the car manufacturers that make specialty vehicles, you know, police packages,
Yeah.
they actually have a wiring block in them specifically for radios?
Yeah, so now if you pay an extra $7,000 for a Ford Exploder, the Pursuit model, so you get the police package, and there's wiring up in the headliner for a light bar. There's wiring to the lights or the side view mirrors on the doors for extra lighting. There's wiring back to the tailgate to put extra emergency lighting back there and things. And that's an extra package, and they offer also pickoff points for 12 volts for radio equipment. I'm going to go work on a Saquon vehicle next week. And in the back, there's a binding post area where I can go get 12 volts, and I don't need to worry about coming through the firewall. Because I always admit my mistakes. I think being honest is really, really a good quality, even if you made a mistake. And one time I made a mistake, and I went through the firewall on a new Ford pickup a couple years ago, and I damaged a wire, and it had to go to the dealer to get repaired, the harness, because I didn't know until after the fact when my friend called me and said, well, I don't want to tell you what he said, a close friend, but he said, dude, that truck wouldn't start. I was working on trophy truck stuff at a race shop, antennas on the house, cameras. And he said, that truck wouldn't start. I said, well, how would I know that? He goes, well, you worked on it. I go, yeah, but you left it parked there. I usually move the trucks from the parking area, and I put them back. I go, this particular truck you already had there, I worked on it and I left. So I didn't know that I made an $800 mistake going through the firewall. So going through the firewall is a very tender thing, because depending on the vehicle, it's kind of easy access, it's never real smooth, and you just need to be so careful negotiating a razor knife because you're working on boots that are on each side of the firewall. Ford and a couple others have a nipple that can be cut off that's on the through cable boot, but you know, you need to know how to negotiate that too. It's all just dangerous territory. So you have your wiring and your protection or fuse. A lot of times I'll buy a bus circuit breaker. NTE makes them also. Excuse me. Did you want to say something?
No, I was just putting eye drops in.
Okay, I'm just pretending I'm a teacher at school. He used to just kick my ass, go, Mr. Wayne, did you want to say something? I go, so sorry.
But while we're at it, do the professional grade police interceptor, one, does it have a special alternator that's typical of a consumer grade alternator? And then two, the batteries, does it have additional batteries?
So that's a really good question. So the answer is no. It does have a heavy duty output, 150 amp, and it can be ordered with a higher amp output. But no, the ambulances do. That's why it's a good question. You can order an ambulance package, and of course it's dual batteries, but it's dual alternators. So you have two alternators on an ambulance typically. And you have 200 watt sirens that are, you know, instead of just a 100 watt siren, that type thing. So yeah, the ambulances see that continuous duty. But the ambulance is funny, they have a Hobbs meter, which is an hour meter, counts how many hours the vehicle's been running. And you'll find a lot of hours on it and low miles, because ambulances just sit and idle all the time. So that's what they do. They go to the incident, idle, and then transport.
You know, the LED lighting has really helped in this area. Because
Also,
we used to have to order heavy duty alternators for work. Because like as an example, the old CHP cars with the vector bars, those things were 65 amps.
Yeah.
And so if you didn't have a 100 amp alternator or better, you might actually stress it out.
Well, you can't leave the vehicle running in the old days without, or you have to leave the vehicle running.
Right.
You can't have it off with the light bulb, because you have little motors that are turning these reflectors with halogen light bulbs, and that all draws current. Now you've got LEDs that are programmed to do things, and there's no mechanical motion of anything. And you can take one LED and give it 3 different patterns or 5 patterns, different colors. Kenny, did you ask something?
When you put terminals on these big power wires, the number 8 wires, do you just crimp or do you crimp and solder?
Okay, so maybe if it's a marine application, I might crimp and solder, but I don't solder a lot because it's brittle. And it's a mobile application. It's not like a home well, the wire's never gonna move. My wires are
So
gonna
much for my
vibrate.
beautiful day up on my roof.
Sorry.
Do a little bit of personal maintenance. Got my weather stuff I'm gonna work on.
Okay.
Just enjoying the view.
You got something to say, Mr. Wayne?
I already did in the beginning. I said my name's Hank and I'm a ham. So, another good question. I come in with that 8 gauge and I go to a fuse block usually. So I will definitely heat shrink stuff, and I want it to look pretty. I want someone to look at my work that does what I do, and I want them to think about it, you know. So I'm always conscious. I'll spend the extra time, but I come into a fuse block with multiple fuses. There's the base stations, and I'll have maybe a 6-position fuse block, and I can go fuse. There's a radio mounted in the overhead console, which makes it safer and easier to kind of use. But I'll have that fuse block, and I'll use that for distribution to different equipment and things of that nature. So that's kind of how I get my power in. And then you've got your hybrid stuff. So I have a friend over in Point Loma, and when they got their Toyota this year, it says no ham radios. So I built her, you know, in a Pelican case, a to-go box. So it's got a radio for 2 meters. It's got a mag mount antenna wound up. I've got a battery in there, like actually got a pretty good size 15 amp hour battery. On the side, I've got a cigarette lighter port, female, and then I've got USB ports. So she can charge off the battery that's internal to a USB device, or she can plug in her cigarette lighter cable I made and plug it in the cigarette lighter plug in the console, and she can charge that battery. That way we don't void the warranty on the Toyota or anything like that. They're concerned about RF in their computers, and then they're concerned about parasitic draws on the electrical system too, things of that nature, and they just they're starting to be real careful and put it in the book. So you know, you don't want to void your warranty or anything like that. So I just kind of touched on the part about power distribution. Any questions about that? Sir?
Through the firewall, well, I really want to focus on the nipple. Is there 1 or 2 nipples? Because you have the battery on different sides of the car, right? I'm just curious. And how do you locate the nipples? And how do you get through them?
Take him in another room.
Okay, so first I close my eyes.
I mean, getting through the firewall, right, is like first base. So you get through the firewall. How do you get through that nipple? And is it a thing you remove to get through the firewall?
Okay,
Because I
so-
run through in my car, and it was very difficult.
It protrudes over an inch, and then it's got a longer end on it.
I'm sorry.
If you try and go down to the base of that and cut it off,
Okay.
well, I've got that's the inside that you.
I mean, but is there something else going through it, or is it like an
It's
accessory?
hollow.
Oh,
It's
it's
hollow.
so you can remove it.
You don't
or you have
remove
to
it.
cut
You
it.
have to cut the very end off, but
Ah.
you can't go down to where it starts at the rubber and cut it. It's so hard to cut.
Okay.
It's so hard to cut, and you're not in a good position. You're inside the engine compartment trying to get down there.
So when you run, if you're running antennas that are hood mount, for example,
But the yeah.
are you going through the same nipple
Yeah.
entry with the power?
Yeah, I had a Chevy truck, I think it was. So on a Ford, there's the access area when you get up under the hood, or
Yeah.
under the dash. On a Chevy, you have to take out the fuse block that's up behind the emergency brake. You have to remove that to gain access to the through foot for the harness.
Okay.
And it's a pain in the ass, or it's a pain. So what I did on the last one was I'm all, well, that's a cool surface, and I'm just all bang. I blew a hole in it and I put a grommet in there.
Oh.
And I just used my own area because I found a place in the firewall. You have a lot of insulation on the firewall too. It's not bare metal. So you have to pick and choose and cut with the razor knife. It's a little pay attention kind of thing.
And then one more question, and then I'll let whoever go.
No, no.
In regards to RF inside the vehicle, I used to have, when I was young, when I first got my license, I got I had a 2-meter handheld, and I got a brand new Geostorm GSI, if you remember that brand of vehicle. And I hit the transmit button after I drove off the lot, and the airbags popped open. And I thought it was the vehicle. I didn't realize that the radio had triggered it, because I was a new ham back then, you know. And I took it back. They fixed it, replaced it. I drove it off. Later that day, I transmitted. Boom! It popped again. So that was when I learned about RF interference with electronics in the car vehicles. How do you prevent that? Because I know it's got to still be an issue today.
So, there's stuff going out, the signal, and there's stuff that's catching it. Here's just my good example. I had a installation, it was in a boat, and I had a 150 watt sideband radio. I had a remote cable, probably 30 feet, going to the main body of the radio. And when I would transmit, the radio would shut off. So it's transient, it's just in the area. So I had to go to the control cable where it went in the control head. I took toroids and I put 3 wraps, because one doesn't really do it. I wrapped it 3 times, and that snubs the RF from going into the control head. That's what all those toroids are for. And I noticed I just got a 705 ICOM, and the power supply has a toroid right by the power plug where it goes in the radio. And that's because when you transmit, it could disturb the power going in the radio and do strange things. So that's a really big job when you're trying to get rid of noise in a vehicle and you have to go start putting toroids on things, because you don't always have enough cable. I take an AM radio, a little transistor radio, I tune it down to the bottom of the band. There's a station on 540, so no, you can't go there, but 550, you know, whatever, 560. And I go around with my AM radio, and I look, and I'm all, well, there's some noise, listen to it. And I can sniff out all kinds of noise with just a pocket radio. And you can do it at home. And I have people that have issues, and they're thinking, why is this happening? I'm all, well, is your radio sitting on your computer? Well, isn't the clock speed in the computer changing and putting out spurious RF and interfering sometimes and not? And why don't you just move the radio? You know, so you got to know your environment, and sometimes you can't guess that's where the noise is. You have to go look for it or something of that nature. So, but snuffing out noise in a car can be challenging. Just all the computer systems and things. But you talk about twice you had that happen. They're very savvy now of things that cause problems. So the grounding and the shielding and everything is pretty darn good. I'm gonna move up to antennas real quick and installation, because you can talk too long about what I'm talking about and not know that they don't really care. So for those of you that aren't really, you know.
We still care, keep going.
Okay, so I'm gonna hit it. And then, did you have a question, CBA?
Do GM cars have that magic nipple, or just Fords?
Fords.
Just Fords.
Yeah. So, magic nipple. Raj.
Let's talk about ground loops and buzzing in the radio. Remember my little yellow box you saw back there, how I would key up and there I had that alternator whine?
So here's what Raj is talking about, because I already know his problem. I'm not cutting you off. Raj has had this problem for a while. Roger's not new to radios, and he's definitely not new to working on vehicles or electrical. But this was eluding him for a while, and it was basically like an alternator whine, right?
Right.
And the difference is, if you have spark plugs, they may be a tick, 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 tick. But an alternator rises and falls with the RPM of the motor. And it's more of a whine and frequency and nature and things like that. Typically, to get rid of an alternator whine, you will use a filter that's an RF line filter, and it's got a network of a couple like electrolytic capacitors and maybe an RF choke in there to absorb and filter out everything before it goes out the backside to the radio. So the alternator also, which Roger and I were talking about tonight, is usually connected to the engine by a network of brackets. So here, the alternator's grounded by brackets to the engine, and you're all, wait, where's the ground strap or something? So Roger added some ground straps and took care of the problem, but you also have a problem of a ground loop. And that's an odd word unless you really experienced it and understand it. And that is when, you know, you have something and you go hook it to the plus and the minus, but the minus isn't hooked up right. So it's getting its ground from somewhere else. It might be getting it from the bracket or the antenna, and it's having to loop its ground around somewhere that's different, and it causes a lot of interference. And it's kind of a black little science. It's not easy to find or say, well, this is what it sounds like every time. But advanced grounding techniques, when you go, well, I wonder if I got a bad ground. That's the last thing you think of. Then you're going, I just added a ground and everything went away. So that's kind of a good thing to touch on, but it's a tough one to find. So, okay, I'm gonna go up to the antenna on the roof real quick and different mounting applications. Any questions? Okay, so you have your roof mount, which is nice because you have omnidirectional, and theoretically you drill an antenna, so you have a really good ground. We have some people that have racks on their vehicles and they want to mount on the rack. You can buy an antenna that doesn't require a counterpoise. They're constructed different. Please don't ask me about exact difference because I don't know. But you can also have what's normally used as a good ground plane to disperse your signal evenly, because just your antenna is a wet noodle. It needs the metal underneath it to push the signal on. So you can mount and drill on the roof. You can go to the front cowl mount on the hood and use a trunklet mount and bring the wire in through the firewall. And it would be opposite of the AM/FM antenna usually. And that's a great place to get out, take your antenna off. We use a lot of repeaters, so it's not like I gotta be on the roof and have the best simplex operation possible. I'm in San Diego, the repeaters have pretty good coverage. We are really geographically challenged here, and we don't have this. If you ever lived in Texas or you're in Colorado, the characteristics are different for everything. But you know, in San Diego, you know, if you don't have a good working mobile or even base station, you know, there's a lot of hills and things to get through here. So it's kind of a big deal. The trunk lip mount in the front's nice, but also when you have a SUV hatch or a trunk in the back, then you have that application too. I've got a red Toyota out here, and I've got 3 trunk lip mounts on the trunk. I've got 5 radios. Well, the other 2 antennas are for 800 and 450, and they're inside the car on the rear deck, in front of the rear window. I'm not too worried at my age about RF exposure, and so they seem to work good there, and they're kind of undercover. I didn't want too many porcupine kind of thing going on. So, but antenna is pretty easy. To get in the back, you might need to extend your cable and things of that nature. But I always, you see some ground straps on that red trunk, and there's heavy ground strapping. That's for the HF installation on one of my cars. And you can't do an RF ground. That's a Starlink. That guy took 8 hours to make that bracket for my Starlink antenna on that race truck. Just an incredible aluminum guy. I'm lucky with those kind of resources. I carry all kinds of stainless with me. If you don't use stainless, you can run into problems. This guy pulled me over here and gave me a ticket. So there's my trunk lip mounts, and they all work well. I've got some inside the window. This is a boot on the inside of a Ford.
Is that the nipple?
No, you can't see the nipples on the other side, sir. That's me in high school, believe it or not.
Oh, wow.
So, honey, wake up, wake up. Okay, so, a little SATCOM on the boat, Squad 51. No. I did that boat. This is nice that they make all these beautiful La Mesa Police drug seizure cars, the Corvette. But they make all these bitchin' plates I mean, these really nice plates that I can use in consoles. This is a new remote head Motorola radio with beautiful displays. But they make all these little faceplates, so when you put things in a console, it looks like you were organized or something of that nature. So, okay, so I did the power, I did the antenna. I'm going to go to installation techniques. Sir.
Are through the glass antennas still a thing like the old Larsons?
Yeah. So through the glass. So I'm thinking 25% loss. But I'm thinking it's put on the window for efficiency. You didn't put it there because you were looking for performance. You were looking for one of the easiest installations possible. So that's why you went to the window and you knew, you know what, I can get the repeater I want to talk to all the time. So, you know, they're really good for what they need to do. So it's this kind of thing. Yes, sir, Mr. Kent.
As long as the glass doesn't have to be, right?
Yeah, there's an issue with tinted glass and mounting an antenna on there. That can be an issue. So.
Yeah.
Roger.
Magnum mounts on car, are they as good as they say they are, or is there a lack of that magnetic ground?
Well, they're doing you a favor. And they can see the roof, so they can use it as a counterpoise.
Okay.
The problem with mag mounts is the wire comes in through the door. And on coax, the distance between the center conductor and then you have the dielectric and then you have the shield and then the PVC jacket, that distance between the center conductor and the shield is real critical for the impedance of the coax to stay at 50 or 52 ohms. So if you smash that and that coax gets smashed, you just change the impedance and the SWR of the installation. So that's the problem kind of with mag mounts, but you know, they have their place. Especially if you had like a to-go bag and you told your buddy, here, there's an antenna, there's a radio, you know, plug it in the cigarette lighter, we have comms. So, like I suggest people buy a couple of the FRS radios. I don't do FRS or GMRS, I'm familiar with, but if they buy the package of a couple radios and keep them in their vehicle and you have a lost child in your neighborhood, you can deploy some people with comms right away and say, you know, hey, you go that way, you go that way. I got a radio in the car, you know, we're on this channel with this code and that kind of thing. So a lot of different uses for, you know, all the different radio services we have and stuff like that. So I don't mind talking, obviously, but I'm going to move right along and I'm going to get into the inside of the car. Unless you guys have any questions about anything on the exterior that we've been talking about or utilizing. Okay, so inside the car. I don't have always a real nice console to work with and a ham install. This is one of my Mustangs. Those are remote control undercover microphones. And that's a remote control head. But this is a 66 Mustang. And I put them right in the center console there. So there's the CAL FIRE comm unit. Well, one of them. They've got a few nice ones. Off-road race truck. I gotta put the antenna in the back because I have a full like sunroof. Putting antennas on my friend's Humvee here. He's just got this thing about his Humvee and he wants more antennas on it. So, it was in Desert Storm. That's a 50 cal. I mean, it's all armor plated. You have to be careful when you close the door. If your finger was anywhere near the door, it would smash your finger really bad. Anyway, it's just more of my install stuff. Trying to make things ergonomically fit and functionality wise. Plus, for my fire people, oh look at that. For my fire people, I want one fire chief from this department to get in that fire chief's car. And I want the radios the same because we use pretty much the same equipment all the time. And I want synchronous operation. So when he goes over to this channel, it's the same as it is on his radio in his car. So it makes functionality a lot easier. Mounting restrictions in regular cars. I had this compartment in this fire truck in the back. I had the overhead console here, and I take these face plates and cut out the console, and I have a nice mounting area. I'll use double face tape sometimes on things that have brackets, just to get them up really flush, things of that nature. These consoles are really nice because they're made for the radio, and they fit in perfect. So this one's very simplistic with one radio, siren controls. This is an overhead kind of piece I had to be careful with because it's fake pearl wood. But mounting in cars, like I said, my main thing is not to have the radio too low where you can't see it. And then if you have a remote head, you're probably going to want to have a remote speaker with it. And if you have two bands, you might have two speakers and have one here to differentiate and things of that nature. I do a lot of installations of other things in these vehicles. That's an auto eject. When you turn the ignition on, it blows the plug out. It goes to the Kuzma charger. So I do a lot of battery chargers in vehicles. There's so many parasitic drains now from flashlights and walkie-talkie chargers and things of that nature when they're in the station that we all have to be on shore power now. So that's about that. So what have I not covered that you want to hear something about? Sir.
Edwin Chen here. I'm operating HF out of my 4Runner, and I'm told that the myth is that I have to have everything bonded to everything in order to operate. So far, all I've done is bond the tailgate to the body of the truck, and I seem to be working fine. But I'm happy to hear if there's other things that I should be doing.
Well, respectfully, you're an older guy, and I'm an older guy. And I remember younger days reading grounding applications, noise, and things of that nature. And we used to ground, you could call it bonding, exhaust systems, hoods, trunks, everything. Let's ground everything to everything. We don't have to do that anymore. So it's not required. So you probably could get by without, oh, that's Ruby the cat, by the way. You probably could get by without doing all that. Just because, as I said, now they're computers. They come out with computers in cars and they find they have RF problems. So part of the design and development is electromagnetic interference, like we were just talking about with one of these gentlemen earlier tonight, and that kind of thing. So I don't think that's a big problem. And RF interference in your receiver is not as bad anymore too, but it can be there. HF is a little different. The sensitivity in the lower frequencies are more susceptible to hearing interference than an FM signal that's squelched, and the noise floor is different. You know, on UHF, on VHF, on HF, and things of that. Does that answer it?
Yes.
Okay. Is there anything else I haven't covered? Norman?
All of these consoles I see, I'm wondering if they're all custom fab or if there's some commercially available solutions, and if so, which vendors sell them for a common vehicle like a Ford F-350, which is the base for some of these vehicles.
So there's 3 or 4 big manufacturers and a few others.
Okay.
And they all have them for the vehicle. And depending, you might have to take the seat out. You have a center console, that gets replaced, that kind of thing. But no, there's readily available consoles. I can help you source all that stuff.
Are they relatively
Surplus out there.
So a console's maybe about $250.
not bad?
And then if you buy the faceplate, so if you buy a console for 3 radios, the faceplates are about $60. So you get a console for $250, and then the faceplates are about $60 for your 3 radios, that kind of thing. And then you have a pretty custom piece of equipment.
Nice.
The console tub itself is pretty much standard.
Yeah.
It's the mounting plate to the floor, and they make them so that they can remove the mounting, like the bolts, and actually the console plates mount to the seat bolts, and at least that's how all of our cars are.
Yeah, a lot of them, the seats come out, and there's a plate that goes on the floor and gets fastened by the seat bolt mounts. And then the console goes on that. I'll sometimes just cheat. I'll take the old console out and I'll just bolt it right to the floor. I don't want the floor plate because in that application I don't want it. But that's just some. So it's pretty good stuff. It makes it a very professional install.
I see one you installed in the sunglass.
Yeah, that's my Toyota out here.
Oh, really?
That's an FTM 500. There's that 8-hour mount again that he made out of aluminum. That's FTM 500, and I remoted it, and it happened to fit up there perfect. I'm putting an 891 up there too.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so I'm gonna have both of them. So just you'll have them on the frequency you want to use, and you just hit the volume, you know, and you don't need to look.
Yeah.
It's much better than me looking down. I don't like that. So, and that's the one that I have the FTM up in the top. So that's the inside of Ford, I think, the other day, a Ford. Yeah.
Who's that clown?
Yeah, who's that clown from high school?
You still got that shoe?
What's that?
You still have it?
Stank?
Yeah.
No, I've got some other ones now. That was a while ago. I wish I had that one. Boy, that was a real chick magnet for baby chickens and birds.
I think it was that hair.
Yeah, right? Okay, any other questions? Can I bore you more?
What do you do for vehicles that are now more and more plastic, they don't have metal to mount your antenna to? What do you do for your counterpoise?
Well, that's kind of a good question because the Ford now, all the Ford trucks are heat-treated aluminum bodies. So mag mounts don't stick to them.
Well, just your, some of the cars like a Corvette, fiberglass. There is no metal at all.
You use an antenna that doesn't require a counterpoise, they make them. And I don't know the characteristics of the construction, but you use an antenna like that. Or, so I've had to do boats that do the transpac, and they have to check in on HF twice a day. So I've installed HF radios, and then I've taken 3-inch wide copper strap, and I've run it in the pontoons, different lengths for different bands. You can't take copper wire, 10 gauge, 8 gauge, and use that for a counterpoise. Maybe you can use a little string of wire for your walkie-talkie antenna for a little pigtail, but you need to have surface area for RF. DC voltage travels on the inside of the wire, goes right through that 8 gauge or 10, but RF travels on the outside of the wire. So if you try and use a wire for your counterpoise, it doesn't work that well. You need to use some flat copper strap or braided type material and that kind of thing. You'll see that I had some braided material. That's how many radios I fit under the rear seat of that guy's Ford. Anyways, you gotta be really creative where you're gonna fit everything. It's almost like management. Yeah. So, okay. Ken.
So what's the best mobile NMO or something else?
Well, I choose the NMO mount. Motorola developed that a long time ago. Other than the PO mount. So the PO mount looks like an SO239. You know, like what a PL259 would go on. Now, I've got one of those mounts. Mine are NMO, but I've got a PL mount like that for an HF antenna, for a screwdriver, because that's what it takes. But the nice thing is, if you really wanted to, you could pull the car up to your base station, take the cable for your base station antenna, your cobweb, whatever, and plug it in and, you know, have ops off of your big antenna with your mobile. And it's just because the connector is the same, but I'm an NMO guy, but for HF applications, they don't all seem to use NMO at all. Speaking of antennas though.
SGC.
Okay.
That's what we use. For our mobile.
You
our
use,
mobile
oh, but that's because the tech chose to use it. Okay,
No,
well,
that's what I
well, because
spec
it's
them out.
mobile.
I spec those out because of the way that they work. The SGC mobile HF antenna mounts, we love them.
Oh, that antenna.
That's what, yeah.
So I'm gonna reach out to you guys. We have a guy here who's putting up an antenna and needs some help. And I occasionally like to reach out and see if I can put an antenna, a team of people together to go over to, in this example, it's Noel's house. And we want to help him finish putting up his, is it a cobweb or? Hex beam. And I know some of you have experience with hex beams and things like that, but my thing is the more guys we have, the safer it is to do something like this. And it's not really a party, it's kind of an install. But you guys all know how to get a hold of me, and you know, if you could reach out to me and tell me you could be part of our team and we can help Noel get his antenna up, I'd greatly appreciate it. And it probably will pay twice as much as last time. But anyways, please keep that in mind and reach out to me. Any other questions about stuff?
What about these electric trucks and electric cars and Priuses?
What about them? Don't touch the orange wire.
Yeah.
Yeah, the 400 volt wire.
Wow.
Yeah, but usually a Prius or something has a 12 volt pickoff point. You know, where you can go get 12 volts. Because there is a 12 volt battery in a Prius. So it's in the back
Right.
and runs some things. Sir,
When you do an install, they can range, quite a bit on the complexity and everything. How do you work the billing? Do you do it by hour? Do you?
how do I, the billing?
Yeah.
Well, but you're talking about public safety. I work for public safety.
Yeah.
And most of the fire departments in the county, and you talk about ham radio. Hey, so you can't, you know, I know what it's gonna take to do that fire truck install. And you've got an intercom with headsets. I know I have to interface the radio, which is extra push to talk wiring and mic, and I know all that, and I know how long it takes, and I've been working for them so long, I don't usually get asked for a quote. They usually just have me come out and do the work, and I bill them, and nobody ever complains. And then for the ham installs, I have to realize it's the ham community, and part of what they're doing is not because they want to be some CB or talking smack on the radio. They want to maybe be part of an important emergency or the bigger picture sometime. You know, they're not just in it for that. Because first of all, it's a service, it's not a hobby. Secondly, it's a hobby. And people kind of lose track of that. But I'm reasonable for the ham radio community. They don't ever complain to me. And, you know, it's pretty simplistic to a lot of the other stuff I do. But, you know, it's not like I'm going to fall on top of the fire truck and I better not make a mistake on drilling the antenna, you know, because of what I can do or dancing stuff. It's a little different. Questions? All right, coolness. Well, thank you for letting me talk to you guys. And I have a event coming up. It's the Hamtastic. It's something that we've been doing the last 5 years, and it works out pretty good for the community. I like that. And then,
How many people know about
We
it?
like it too.
Who's been fantastic?
well, most of these people know about it. So, and there's a website, Hamtastic SD, like sandiego.com. And my beautiful webmaster here, Norm, Norm keeps my website up and running, and Norm just updated it a couple nights ago. And I don't have my guest speakers all on there yet. I've got the time and the date. Waiting to get Parks and Rec to give me back my permit. I get a permit every year for this, but I'm looking for guest speakers that have topic or subject matter, similar to maybe what I did, and that they can make a presentation for 20, 30, 40 minutes. We're trying to get a tent, 20 by 30, maybe get like 50 chairs, and have an area for an educational department. Larry, KN6IYC right there, the guy with his hat in the air.